Your phone told you it was going to be sunny all weekend. You believed it. You made plans around it. You got up Saturday morning and the sky was already going gray at the edges, and by noon the rain was coming down hard enough to flood the low end of the garden, and by evening the wind had taken the tarp off the woodpile, and you were standing on the porch watching it go. The phone said partly cloudy, the mountain said something different, and the mountain was right. My name is Elias Carter. I was raised in the hill country of western North Carolina, where my family has farmed the same ridge for 6 generations. We have never owned a weather radio. We have never subscribed to a forecast service. And we have never been caught flat-footed by a storm that we did not see coming at least 2 days before it arrived, not because we are lucky and not because we have some gift for it, because the men and women who farmed this ridge before us paid attention to the sky and the wind and the animals and the feel of the morning air for so long and so carefully that they built up a body of knowledge about how weather moves through these mountains that is more accurate for this specific piece of ground than any satellite model running on a computer 4 states away has ever managed to be. Today, I am going to give you that knowledge. I'm going to walk you through exactly what the old Appalachian farmers read, what each sign means, how far ahead it tells you, and how to put it all together into a working picture of what the next 3 days are going to bring. And I'm going to tell you the part that ought to make you think, which is that you were born with the same eyes and the same nose and the same skin as the people who knew all of this, and the only reason you do not know it is that nobody showed you. Stay with me. Before I walk you through the signs, I want to say something about how the old mountain farmers thought about weather reading because it shapes the whole thing. They did not look for one sign and make a decision. They looked at everything at once: the sky, the wind, the plants, the animals, the smell of the air, the feel of the humidity on their skin, and they weighed all of it together. A single sign can mislead you. A dozen signs all pointing the same direction almost never do. The old farmers called it reading the whole holler, meaning you did not just look up at the sky. You looked at the way the creek sounded, the way the cattle were standing, the way the smoke came off the chimney, the way your joints felt when you got out of bed. All of it together told a story, and that story was the forecast. Keep that in mind as I walk you through each piece, because the power of this method comes from combining the signs, not from using any one of them alone. My grandfather checked the weather every morning of his life, and he never once looked at a phone or a radio to do it. He walked out the back door in his boots before breakfast, stood at the edge of the porch for a few minutes, looked at the sky and felt the air and listened, and came back inside knowing what the day was going to do and what the next 2 or 3 days were likely to bring. He was right more often than the forecast, not always, but more often, and he could tell you exactly what he had seen and why it meant what it meant. That is what I am going to give you today. The first thing the old mountain farmers read was the sky, specifically the clouds, and not just whether there were clouds, but what kind they were, where they were, and which direction they were moving. There are a few cloud signs that the old-timers read as reliably as any instrument. A ring around the sun or the moon is one of the most reliable long-range weather signs there is. The ring, which is caused by ice crystals in thin, high cirrus cloud, means that a large weather system is approaching and that it is still 1 to 3 days out. The old mountain farmers said ring around the moon, rain by noon, though in practice the timing depends on how fast the system is moving. What the ring tells you is that the leading edge of a large weather system is already overhead in the upper atmosphere, and that the lower, wetter layers of that system are following behind it. The wider and more complete the ring, the closer the system. A faint partial ring might give you 2 or 3 days. A bright complete ring usually means rain within 24 to 48 hours. The old-timers never ignored a ring. It was one of the most trusted signs on the ridge, and my grandfather could see one forming on a clear night and tell you with confidence whether it meant tomorrow or the day after. Red sky at morning is the second sky sign worth knowing, and it has been known for so long that it appears in the Bible in Matthew chapter 16, where the Pharisees ask Jesus for a sign, and he says, "When it is evening, you say it will be fair weather, for the sky is red, and in the morning it will be stormy today, for the sky is red and threatening." That is how old this sign is, and it is still accurate. A red sky in the morning means that dry air and high pressure, which produce good weather, have moved east, and that moisture is now moving in from the west. In the mountain tradition, a deep red or orange eastern sky at sunrise meant rain within 12 to 24 hours. A pale pink sky was less certain, but still worth watching. Red sky at night, as the saying goes, is the opposite. Dry air is moving in from the west, and the next day is likely to be clear. High, thin clouds spreading across the sky from the west or southwest, what the old-timers called a milk sky, are telling you the same thing as the ring around the moon. A weather system is approaching from that direction, and the high, thin cloud is its advance guard. When you watch those clouds spreading and thickening over the course of a day, moving from thin, wispy streaks in the morning to a solid, pale overcast by afternoon, you are watching a weather system walk toward you in real time. Rain usually follows within 24 to 48 hours of the sky going fully milky. The old mountain farmers had hay to get in and corn to tend and gardens to plant around, and they read that milk sky the same way a ship's captain reads the horizon. It told them how much time they had, and they used every hour of it. The second thing the old mountain farmers read was the wind, both its direction and its behavior. Wind direction is one of the most useful forecasting tools available, and it is completely free to anyone who steps outside and pays attention. In the southern Appalachians, wind from the southwest brings warm, moist air up from the Gulf of Mexico. A southwest wind that builds through the day, warm and humid, often brings rain within 24 hours, especially if it arrives ahead of a dropping pressure system. Wind from the northwest brings cold, dry air down from Canada and almost always means clearing weather and falling temperatures. A northwest wind after a rain is one of the most reliable signs of improving conditions there is in these mountains. Wind from the east or northeast is the one that the old mountain farmers watched most carefully because an east wind in these mountains is almost always a sign of approaching trouble. The old saying was wind from the east. Weather is a beast and it holds up. An easterly wind means a low pressure system is approaching and pulling air around its leading edge. Rain is usually coming within 12 to 24 hours of an east wind establishing itself. Watch how the wind behaves as well as where it comes from. A wind that shifts direction during the day, especially one that backs counterclockwise from south to southeast to east, is telling you that a low pressure system is rotating past you and drawing you into its wet side. A wind that veers clockwise from south to southwest to west is telling you the same system is moving away and clearing conditions are following. The old farmers read these shifts the way a sailor reads them, with the understanding that the wind is a map of the pressure systems moving around you, and that if you know how to read the map, you know what is coming. Smoke behavior was another wind sign the old mountain farmers watched closely. On a fair weather day with high pressure, wood smoke from the chimney rises straight up and disperses high in the air. When pressure begins to fall ahead of an approaching storm, the smoke flattens out and hugs the ground or drifts sideways at low level. The old-timers said when the smoke lays down, the rain is coming down, and they were rarely wrong about it. The reason is that falling air pressure means the atmosphere is less dense and has less capacity to lift and disperse the smoke, so it sinks toward the ground instead of rising. A chimney that was drawing straight and clean in the morning and laying its smoke flat by afternoon is telling you the pressure is dropping and weather is on the way. My grandmother watched the chimney smoke every morning from the kitchen window while she made breakfast, and she could tell before the coffee was done whether it was a working day or a battening down day. The third thing the old mountain farmers read was the plants, and this is the part that most people find hardest to believe until they have tested it themselves, because plants respond to changes in humidity and atmospheric pressure in ways that are directly readable if you know what to look for. Clover and wood sorrel fold their leaves downward and inward before rain. They do this because the stomata on their leaves, the tiny pores through which they exchange gases and water, are sensitive to humidity changes, and as humidity rises ahead of an approaching storm, the plants partially close their leaves to reduce water loss through those pores. The old mountain people watched clover in the fields and wood sorrel in the garden edges, and when they saw the leaves closing in the afternoon of what had been a clear day, they knew rain was likely by morning. It sounds like superstition until you understand the mechanism, and then it sounds like a perfectly good barometer growing for free in every field. Pine cones open and close with changes in humidity. A pine cone that was open and dry in fair weather will begin to close as humidity rises ahead of rain. The old farmers kept a pine cone on the windowsill of the farmhouse the way some people keep a barometer, and they checked it every morning. A closing pine cone meant weather was building. An opening one meant it was clearing. This is not folklore. Pine cones are designed to open in dry conditions to release their seeds and close in wet conditions to protect them, and they respond to atmospheric humidity changes before the rain actually arrives, which makes them a genuine advance indicator of changing weather. It costs nothing to put a pine cone on your windowsill. I have one on mine right now, and I check it before I check anything else in the morning. Dandelions close their seed heads before rain. If you walk through a meadow in the morning and the dandelion heads that were open and fluffy the day before are now closed tight, rain is likely within hours. The same mechanism as the clover, the plant is responding to rising humidity in the air, but the dandelion does it faster and more dramatically and is one of the easiest plant signs to read, even for someone who has never paid attention to plant weather signs before. The fourth thing the old mountain farmers read was the animals, and the animal signs are some of the most reliable and fastest moving indicators in the whole system because animals are far more sensitive to atmospheric changes than human beings are. Cattle and horses lie down before a storm. This is so well established in the farming tradition that it needs almost no explanation. What is less well known is why. Cattle and horses are sensitive to changes in barometric pressure, and they lie down before rain, both to keep a patch of dry ground beneath them, and because the falling pressure creates a mild physical discomfort that makes them rest rather than move. A field full of lying cattle on what appears to be a clear afternoon is a sign worth taking seriously. The old farmers said when the cows lie down, it is going to rain, and they trusted it as much as the sky signs. I have watched this play out on this farm more times than I can count, and I have never seen a whole herd go down on a clear afternoon and been wrong about what was coming. Birds fly low before a storm. This is another animal sign with a straightforward mechanism. Falling air pressure makes it harder for birds to maintain altitude comfortably, so they drop down and fly closer to the ground. When you see barn swallows that normally hunt high in the air hunting insects close to the ground, or when the crows that normally sit high in the treetops come down to the lower branches, pressure is falling and rain is likely. The old mountain farmers watched their barn swallows the way a pilot watches an altimeter. When the swallows came low, weather was building. Pay attention to the birds on your property, and after a few weeks, you will start to see the pattern clearly. They are doing this every time a system approaches, and they have been doing it long before any of us were watching. Frogs call more loudly and persistently before rain. The moisture-loving nature of frogs means they are highly sensitive to humidity changes, and the rising humidity ahead of a storm triggers more vocal activity in the males. If you live near a creek or a pond and you notice the frogs singing loudly on what seems like a dry evening, pay attention to the sky the next morning. The frogs are usually right. The old mountain people called it the frog chorus, and they listened for it the same way they listened for the wind shift. Spiders are another animal sign the old mountain healers and farmers watched, though this one is less commonly known. Spiders are sensitive to changes in air pressure and humidity, and they tend to build or repair their webs before a period of fair weather and avoid web building before rain. A spider busy repairing and extending her web on a clear morning is a sign of continued fair weather. Spiders that have abandoned their webs or are sitting still at the center without extending them are responding to something in the air that you may not yet feel yourself. The fifth thing the old mountain farmers read was the feel of the air on their skin and the smell of the morning. These are the most personal and the hardest to describe, but they are real. Humid air before a storm feels different from dry air. It sits on the skin differently, heavier and closer, and hair that is normally straight will begin to curl or frizz as the moisture in the air increases. The old mountain women paid close attention to their hair, not out of vanity, but because they knew that hair responds to atmospheric moisture faster than almost any other available indicator. A woman who woke up with hair that had gone curly overnight when it had been straight the evening before knew to expect rain before midday. This is why the old saying, "If your hair goes curly in the morning, carry your umbrella," appeared in households all across these mountains for generations. The smell of rain approaching is real and has a name: petrichor. It is produced by the mixing of plant oils, soil bacteria compounds, and ozone produced by lightning and distant storms, carried ahead of the storm on the leading edge of the moist air mass. The old mountain farmers called it the smell of weather coming, and they could detect it before any cloud was visible on the horizon. If you step outside in the early morning and the air smells faintly of earth and rain and something clean and electric, look to the southwest. Something is coming. Train your nose the same way you train your eyes, and within a season you will be reading that smell as reliably as any sign in the sky. There is one more sign I want to give you that does not fit neatly into any of the categories above, but that the old mountain farmers trusted as much as any other. The sound of the creek. A creek running through these hollows makes a different sound depending on atmospheric conditions. On a high-pressure day with clear weather ahead, creek sounds carry less far. On a low-pressure day with rain approaching, creek sounds carry further and seem louder from the same distance. This happens because low-pressure air is less dense and carries sound further. If you step onto your porch on what seems like a clear morning and the creek sounds louder than usual, closer than usual, clearer than usual, take it as a sign that pressure is dropping and pay attention to the rest of the sky signs through the day. Now, I want to take a moment here because this is the part that matters, and it goes well beyond knowing when to bring in the hay. The satellite forecast that runs on your phone is built on data from weather stations and balloons and orbital satellites and computational models that run millions of calculations per second. It is an extraordinary piece of technology, and I'm not dismissing it. What I am telling you is that it is a general forecast built for a region, not a specific reading of your specific piece of ground. These mountains create their own weather. A ridge can be clear while the holler below it is fogged in. A south-facing slope can be bone dry while the north-facing slope across the creek is getting an inch of rain. The satellite does not know your ridge. It does not know which way your hollow drains the cold air or where the fog tends to sit or how the wind comes over the gap to the northwest and what it brings when it does. The old mountain farmers knew all of those things because they watched the same piece of ground through every season for years, and they built up a picture of its specific behavior that no model has ever replicated. The weather app on your phone is useful, and I'm not telling you to delete it. What I am telling you is that it is not enough on its own for anyone who works outside, anyone who farms or gardens or hunts or keeps animals, anyone whose plans depend on knowing not just whether it will rain somewhere in your county, but whether it will rain on your specific piece of ground at a specific time. For that knowledge, you need the old method. You need to step outside and read the whole holler the way my grandfather did every morning of his life. That knowledge is still available to anyone willing to pay attention. It costs nothing. It requires no subscription and no device and no signal. It requires only that you step outside every morning and evening and look at the sky and feel the air and watch the animals and listen to the creek and notice what you notice. Do that for a season and you will be surprised at what you start to see. Do it for a year and you will start to trust what you see. Do it for 5 years and you will find yourself knowing what is coming before your phone does for your specific piece of ground in ways the satellite will never match. Tell me in the comments what weather signs your family use. Tell me what region you are in and what the old timers in your area read. I read every single one of these, and the signs you all share from your own places are some of the most valuable things that come out of this channel. For folks who want all of it, every method I have covered on this channel and the ones I have not gotten to yet, I have put it together in a book. You will find the link down in the description below. Next time I am going to show you how the old mountain families kept eggs fresh for months without refrigeration. No electricity, no special equipment, nothing but a simple coating the old mountain families used for generations that works just as well today as it did 100 years ago. It is the natural next step from today. Until then, step outside, look at the sky, watch the swallows, smell the morning air, and remember that the people who built these mountains with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.